Did you miss me? Hi, hello, babe. Yes, I'm just gonna get right to the point. Actually, wait, before we do that, mango bubbly, that's our drink for the day. Mango bubbly, it matches my hair, super cute, super slay. Um, yeah, let's just get right into it. I had like a 2 week long breakdown, like right after Mother's Day. And I tried actually to film this video anyway, 2 different times during the span of my 2 week breakdown. Um, no, babe. No, babe. It just no. But I think that's actually perfect for the vibe of Bud Not Buddy because when I was a child, I would always read this book when I was kind of having like the worst time ever, which I read that book like at least 10 times as a kid. So girl, stand up. But really, anyone who loves books is probably a little bit mentally ill. So just always make sure to take care of yourselves. Nothing is more important than your mental, okay? Especially when you're trying to do big things. And it's like the first year of my channel being alive, we gonna work out some kinks and stuff, okay? I learned my lesson, okay? I'm pre-recording like 4 videos right now. I learned. I learned. Also, I know you guys are staring at it. I know, everyone's looking, everyone's questioning. No, it's not my titties. It's these little badges right here, bitch. Okay. I don't know. I'm probably just like dyeing my hair wrong and I just refuse to do it correctly and I refuse to pay someone else to do it. But every time I dye my hair, like specifically the roots at my hairline, they just like don't take. And it can't be that my hair is damaged because it's new hair. So I don't know what's going on there. I don't really care. Hopefully you don't care either, because baby, I'm not redying it. I also just realized, see, it was little things like this that really just egged on my breakdown. I totally thought I grabbed the fucking mango bubbly, and I was wondering, like, isn't the mango like a little bit darker orange? This is orange cream. I was tasting it in my mouth and I was like, this is really sweet. And I don't know if I've mentioned before, I don't love sweet things. I really don't love sweet things. Another thing I don't love is vanilla, which is apparently the cream part of the orange cream. So this is actually really disgusting. I think the flavor is spot on though. So if you like orange cream, let's actually, literally my favorite book in the entire world. I specifically got this copy. I'm always gonna do a disclaimer, okay? Especially when I get the wrong copy of a book. So far, I've been able to get the cute copies. There's The Tale of Desperate. Okay, oop, oop. Hi, let's learn left and right. This is the copy that I would recommend getting. This is the cover that I would recommend getting if you get this book because it is the original cover, and I think anything other than the original is ugly. Yes, including Harry Potter. Why did they change the books? Like, no, because we don't like J.K. Rowling, so but why did they change the cover of those fucking books? That should look ugly as fuck. Anyways, it's also because the cover is actually very important to the story, and it kind of made me upset that in the new cover of the book, they're not showing this blue flyer because this blue flyer is like the entire glue of the story. So that kind of like blew my mind. So yes, this is a little bit damaged, as you can see, but I had to get the original because bitch, what the fuck? So just like I did with the Tale of Despero, we're going to go over facts and, awards as it pertains to this book. So we already went over the John Newbery Award. That's what's right here, but we have a new symbol. Okay. And that is the Coretta Scott King Award. And that is specifically, let me not get it right. I mean wrong. Let me not get it wrong. You can see I haven't been filming in a couple weeks. So the Coretta Scott King Awards are given annually by the American Library Association to outstanding African American authors and illustrators of books for children and young adults. These awards recognize books that best exemplify African American life and culture, as well as universal human values. So, again, as a little Black girl reading this book, I didn't even realize how much I was doing it for the culture, okay, when I was reading this book. I really did not realize. I just loved the fuck out of this book. But I think I was able to connect with it so much because I became obsessed with this book. It was published published in 2003. Okay, so when I was in elementary school, I was over in Italy, and if you don't know much about Italy, you probably do know that there's not a lot of Black people there. No, there's not a lot of Black people there. So I feel like this book once you read it and once we start talking about it, you can really understand the African American culture part of that because this book made me feel so warm because you can tell it's a book about Black people written by Black people for other Black people. I love this book. Anyways, enough with the foreplay. Let's get into it. So first I'm gonna give you the summary. I'm just gonna like literally I wrote this script, guys, maybe 2.5 weeks ago. It's not super fresh in my mind. So if you see me like looking over here to read, like I am so sorry. I wrote it for a reason though. I want to say what's in here. Okay. So we have a little orphan named Bud. His mom died when he was very young, and he ends up getting bounced around between foster homes. And we follow him through his last foster home into his journey of trying to find his father, of trying to find his family. And the way that he finds his family is with this flyer, which is again why I was mad about the cover. Okay, yada yada. And that really is the gist of this book, baby. This kid is looking for his father, and he doesn't want to be in the foster home anymore. And this is taking place during the Great Depression, so he does have to deal with things of that nature. And he is in Flint, Michigan during the Great Depression, which I actually think is quite interesting. Okay, because I think the only thing most of us have heard in this generation about Flint, Michigan was that water crisis that happened in, I'm not even going to pretend to know the year. I'm just going to say like 2015-ish and hope that's about right. But Flint been struggling, okay, because there is a large Black population and it was, an industrial type thing. They were doing a lot of manufacturing there, but then obviously the Great Depression hit and then it kind of cleared out and they have never given a fuck about Flint since. And so that is why their water is still the way it is. Historically, it has just been a place in the United States that is not well taken care of because of who lives there. And unfortunately, there are many places like that, both in the North, South, East, and West, girl. Okay. So you can see the African American, like you can see, I love this book. Let's get into our characters. So obviously we have Bud. He's an orphan. He's very smart. The reason why I love this book is because you really don't find main characters and protagonists like Bud in a lot of modern books, especially not as children. This is one smart, sarcastic little motherfucker. Okay. He's a little bit jaded. He is polite. He's not rude. He never means any harm, but he's jaded and he's sarcastic, and it makes sense for his character. You can tell that his mom was very smart and loved talking to him as well, talking to him almost as if like he was an adult, but not necessarily treating him like an adult. Like, you know how if you talk to babies like how I'm talking to you right now, that baby's gonna be real smart. Okay, you know how I know? Because I talked my brother's ear off when he was a child, and that man is the smartest man I know. The next characters we have are the Amoses, and the only good thing I can say about the Amoses is that we don't read about them for long. This is the foster house that Bud was, last placed into that convinces him, hey, I need to just never do this again. I need to just never do this again. And he's been through a lot. So I just, we'll get there. Then we have Todd. Todd is part of the Amoses, but I really just had to separate him because he's that terrible. So Todd is the son of Mr. and Mrs. Amos, and he is a sadistic, twisted little child. Um, he was part of the reason that Bud decides, no more foster care. So again, just they're two terrible people that raised a terrible son. And it's giving a really, really, really bad case of boy mom, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Then we have Jerry. This is the boy that Bud rooms with while he's at the home. He kind of acts as like a younger brother for the brief period that we do see him. I did just want to introduce him because, there's very few people that act as family toward Bud, and Jerry is one of them, even though we don't see him for long. So I wanted to include him. Then we have Bugs. Oh my gosh, I love Bugs. I don't think it actually says in the book, but I just want to say I have always envisioned Bugs as being Hispanic, and that might not be true. Because, when I was a child, did I know that Flint, Michigan was predominantly Black? No, I was living in Europe, so I had no idea. So I was just, envisioning the characters as I was envisioning them. To me, Bugs is a Hispanic little dude. I think he's so fun. I think he plays with Bud nicely, and I think their friendship, their brothership is amazing. Amazing characters, tens all around. Those are our characters. So now let's get into our major events. So the book starts off, and yes, I'm going to already be analyzing the first sentence. The very first words in this book are, "Here we go again." And reading those words really just it took me back, okay, because again, I was a kid who read this book over and over and over, and those first words were always words of comfort, and I'd be like, "Yes," like, now I have the next couple hours to read Bud Not Buddy, you know what I mean? And I feel like it's come full circle, here we go again. So I really just like that opening. It's so warm, it's so inviting, and you're about to learn such terrible things about Bud. But the person that is, doing things again is Bud. He's sitting in the cafeteria and he's waiting for his food. It's another day for him at the home. And so as they are waiting for their food, they have to be quiet in the cafeteria, which I found kind of weird because they're kids, but apparently they're supposed to be silent. So if anyone's walking through the cafeteria, like any of the workers, they're going to hear them click clacking on the floor. And they know that when they hear Miss Girl click clacking on the floor, that they better sit down and shut up. Okay, because either two things can happen. One of two things can happen. Either someone's about to get adopted or placed into a foster home, or someone's about to get hit. And I think it's very interesting that they are predisposed to expect that they're about to get hit. That's why they all go quiet and they're like, "Let me be on my best behavior, child. I hope it's not me. I hope it's not me." Even though one of the two options for why this person is walking through the cafeteria could be good, could be something good, an opportunity for them, they are always expecting the bad. And I think that really shows the state of mind that these foster kids in this fictional book, but obviously in real life as well, what kind of state they are in. They are always ready for the worst. They're always ready for the bad news. They're always ready to get kicked, punched, whatever, because that is what they've had to grow up in. And it's not even, it's all of them. Like, it's not like, oh, and one kid was over there yapping and yelling and he was being silly and he doesn't know. It's like, no, they're all ready to get beat. Every single one of them. None of them end up getting beat, and Bud and Jerry are actually approached by the lady, and she says, "Oh, shoot, are you Buddy?" And he said, "It's Bud, not Buddy, ma'am." That's like his motto. It's like as soon as someone talks to him, he's like, "It's Bud, not Buddy." Just by the way. Now, to be fair, she does correct herself and she ends up calling him Bud. And she's like, "Well, Bud and Jerry, you guys are about to be placed into a foster home. So y'all got to pack your shit up and go." And she tells them they can't have breakfast, which I feel is like, can the foster parents not wait 15 minutes for the children to eat breakfast? Like, I'm sure they should be caring about these children, so can they not wait for them to eat breakfast? Like, that's just a little bit crazy to me. Or you could have told them, "Hey, guys, you're gonna skip breakfast today. Instead, go pack up," instead of, like, interrupting their meal. Anyways, Bud and Jerry immediately assume that they're going to get placed together because, like I said before, they kind of have this sibling relationship with Jerry being the younger one. He's about 6 and Bud is 10. However, they are informed that they are going to go into separate houses. With Jerry, he's going to go live with three older girls, so he would be the youngest boy, and Bud is going to live with the Amoses, with Thomas, who is about 2 years older than him because Bud is 10 and Thomas is 12. And I do like this, I'm just gonna call her a social worker because it's not like she's really given a title, it's not like the children would know, but it's being narrated by a child. So I think she's a social worker. Don't quote me. But she does take the time to explain to Bud and Jerry, which I think is really nice, that hey, in any other situation, you guys would be put together. We don't want to separate you, but we are in the middle of the Great Depression, and you guys are lucky that these families could take on one more child, but they definitely can't take two. And so I think that does show a certain amount of respect for the boys, not just telling them, well, this is how it's going to be, that's where you're going. I actually like this lady, did y'all hear that? The neighbors, they might be moving things around. Anyways, I like this lady. I think she shows these boys an appropriate level of respect. It's not like they're gonna super understand what the Great Depression is, but at least she can tell them like, hey, you guys can still be brothers at heart, but it's just a matter of we can't. Not that we don't want to. It's not like anyone is, plotting against you guys. So don't go around thinking that. It's not that they didn't want both of you. It's that we literally can't. This is the last time we see this lady. I think she's pretty chill. She corrected herself on Bud's name as well, even though she could just be like, "Shut the fuck up, you're a child." I think she is a good adult to leave the home for, to leave the home on. You know what I mean? Oh, I did forget though, in parting, like as she's sending them away to their room, she's like, "Don't look so glum. Remember our little motto that we have at the home." And it's that when we get to the house, we should be cheerful, helpful, and grateful, helpful, like, be cheerful, grateful, whatever. Helpful? I really feel if you are fostering a child for them to do things around the house, what are you doing? Even like I wouldn't like if I fostered a child, like yes, I would give you chores in a way to, build a routine and give you some kind of like responsibility and like normalcy. But like I'm not gonna tell you to take out the trash really because I just need someone to take the trash out. It's mostly like for you, for your like skills as like a human, you know what I mean? Not for you to like be helpful. You're not my servant. You should not be hiring little servants. Well, it's not hiring, it's not like they're getting paid. But this is the reality of, the current foster care system, but especially when we're in, the 1930s, there's a lot of child labor going on. So they need to be helpful. They need to do things around the house. They can't afford to pay someone to do things around the house. They can't afford people to do a lot of things. So they need everyone to work. And so unfortunately, that was the reality of being a child at that time is, oh, you better be ready to be helpful. You better be able to work. Anyways, they go off to their rooms and they start packing, and it describes Bud as kind of going through the motions, and he even says that his eyes don't cry no more. And again, he's 10. He's 10. He should be crying like a lot, actually. But he does see Jerry over on his bed tearing up, so he stops what he's doing and steps into that kind of big brother role, and he tells Jerry, "Hey, dude, you have nothing to worry about. Like, yeah, you and I won't be together anymore, but think about it. You're gonna be the youngest among three girls. They're probably gonna play house with you and pretend that you're their baby, and they'll take care of you and they'll think you're cute. You're the one boy, like everyone's gonna spoil you." And he ends up cheering up Jerry, but in his head, he's thinking, damn, I feel bad for that guy because 6 is like the worst age to be. The reason that Bud thinks 6 is such a terrible age to be is because that's the age that his mom died. So he's sitting there thinking, something bad is probably going to happen to Jerry at that house because 6 is when you start becoming an adult. 6 is when you start becoming a man. And to grow up, you got to go through something probably. So good luck, Jerry. Life only gets worse from here. And he's 10. I just I have a soft spot in my heart for Bud, obviously, but even if I didn't, like, the fact that he's had to grow up so much, the fact that he's so aware of things like this, but he doesn't yet fully, like, understand it, it's not fully baked and formed in his mind. It's just so sad because his brain, cannot wrap his head around some of the concepts that are in there because they shouldn't be in there. You know what I mean? There's no such thing as growing up by the age of 10. There's no such thing as becoming a man at 6, you know what I mean? But that's what Bud unfortunately had to do. Jerry eventually stops crying thanks to Bud, and Bud goes back to his bed to, finish packing up his stuff. And this is one of my favorite things that happens in the book. It's a regular occurrence. Bud goes through his suitcase. Oh my gosh. If you talked to like 8-year-old me, I could probably list to you off the top of my head, rapid fire, everything that Bud kept in his suitcase just because he goes through it so many times in the book to make sure everything's there. Because, people steal things. He's in a poor area, he's just a little kid. He could get stolen from and mugged very easily. But he also goes through his Jesus, suitcase. I was about to say bookcase. I'm like, no. He goes through his suitcase to remember his mom. And I just love the way that he always puts things back in the same way. Like literally, if you gave me a replica of Bud's suitcase and everything he kept in it, I promise you I would be able to arrange it in the exact way that he keeps his suitcase organized in the book. It's just one of my favorite things that he does is he goes over the stuff in his suitcase, he makes sure it's all there, he touches all of it, he looks at it, and he's like, yes. So we're about to go through that little list. I don't think he goes through everything in this section just because he is about to go to the foster home, so he kind of really has no time. He was comforting his little brother, and that's okay. But I think, let me see. Let me see, child. Let me look. Okay, yes, he looks at his flyers, specifically this flyer, okay? And give me a second, child. Okay, so the flyer that's most important to him is obviously this blue flyer, and it reads, limited engagement direct from an SRO engagement in New York City, Herman E. Calloway and the Dusky Devastators of the Depression. Next, the paper says Masters of the New Jazz, and he says that in the middle of the flyer, there's a blurry picture of this man on a fiddle. Are we going to focus today? Him right there. That's Herman E. Calloway, and he's like, I know that that one is my father. Right underneath that picture, someone had written on the flyer with Sharpie to do one night only in Flint, Michigan at the luxurious 50 grand on Saturday, June 16th, 1932, 9 p.m. until question mark because they like to party. Okay. And he says he remembers his mom bringing in this flyer. And again, this is why I'm so mad that other versions of the book don't have the flyer as the cover. Like, it actually made me mad. Like, looking for the book, I was like, because ain't no way. I literally told myself, I was like, if I cannot get the correct cover for this book, I'm just not gonna read it. Like, it was that deep, y'all. He says that he remembers his mom bringing home specifically this blue flyer with the writing on it, and she became obsessed with it. She kept fiddling with it. You know, she had obviously other flyers. He has a couple other flyers for the Dusky Devastators of the Depression in his suitcase, but they're yellow, they're not blue, and his mother wasn't obsessed with them like she was with this one. She would pick it up and put it down, not put it away with the other flyers. It was just out on the dining room table for a while, and he says that is kind of what led up to her dying. He says, like a week or so after she brought this home and was mega obsessed about it, he walks into her room one day and finds her dead. So, in his little 6-year-old mind at the time, he's thinking, well, this flyer has something to do with something, so I need to take it. And that's just really like, as an adult, realizing that he was so traumatized that he didn't know what was going on really. Um, but knowing that it had something to do with the flyer because he knew his mom so well, and her just fiddling with this flyer was so out of the ordinary, and the energy she had around this flyer was so out of the ordinary that Bud just knew that it had something to do with her death. God, like, he's a smart kid. He is a smart kid, and you cannot say otherwise, but the way that he has to apply his intelligence, it'll just break your heart. Was the only thing that Bud could look over in his suitcase before he has to go to the foster home, and when he arrives at the foster home, it's actually one of the most memorable scenes, at least to me, in the book. It's the one I feel like okay, actually, it's like the second most memorable. The first most memorable, we're gonna get to in about, like, 4 pages. So, Bud is sleeping at the Amos's house, and he's actually sleeping on top of, like, plastic, like, in the 80s, 70s, question mark? I don't know, I've only seen pictures where they had, like, that plastic stuff over their, like, couches and stuff. I'm guessing it was to not get them dirty, like, just clean the couch, question mark, but anyways, so the mom, Mrs. Amos, hates bedwetters, which is so great that she's fostering young children. And so because Bud is a young child, he has to kind of like prove that he's not a bedwetter, and so he has to sleep on top of this hot, nasty, sticky plastic. So he's having some terrible sleep, and Todd comes over and he takes a pencil, which I don't have a number two pencil, but it's very specifically a Ticonderoga. Is that how you pronounce it? Ticonderoga. I mean, how else would you pronounce it? Ticonderoga. I've actually never heard that word like out loud. Um, he takes a pencil, a number two pencil, and he starts shoving it up his nose. And Bud wakes up when he's apparently on the letter N, and Todd is like, wow, like no one else has gotten to the letter N. Like you did such a good job, buddy. And Bud slaps him across the fucking face. Unfortunately, this is exactly what Todd wanted because it gives him a reason to beat the absolute fuck out of Bud, which is exactly what he does. Like, Bud is on the floor, he's kicking, kicking, kicking. His face like explodes with blood, and he's just curled up on the floor. And that's when we get to another little quirk that Bud has, which is his rules and things. So let me go and read it because I want to get the wording correct. Okay, I actually lied. It's just a saying. that, he says, and it's, "You have to have enough sense to know when to stop, when to just not fight back anymore." So that's why he crawled into a ball, and he was just waiting for Todd to stop. Now Todd does stop because his mom comes into the room, and he immediately starts playing the victim card. He goes, "Mom, I was just trying to wake him up so he wouldn't wet the bed in the middle of the night because I know you hate me. He attacked me. He attacks me, mama." Obviously done this before. The mom has even obviously done this before. Like, girl, you know, what? One person is bloody, the other is not. Like, what are you literally talking about? And we can see Bud. Okay, yeah, he's 10, but he looks about 7. He's tiny. He's scrawny. Okay, so the mom takes her son's side and is like, "What did you do to my little toddy? You little cur." I was reading this book on Laguna Beach. Okay, I was wearing my nice little shorts and my little cute little top, baking in the sun. That's why I'm so tan. Okay. And I read the word cur and I said, "Oh, that really affected my spirit." I need to make sure that's not a slur. It's not a slur, but she might as well have used it as one, because it means dog, like mongrel, like mutt, like dirty, nasty, stray dog. And here's the thing, he's a foster kid that's been bounced around from home to home. So in some ways, you know, you kind of feel like a stray dog. You don't really have a home. She knows what she's calling him, okay? But keep in mind, cur means dog, and they keep referring to him as Buddy, not Bud. I know that kind of doesn't make sense at this point, but it will make sense later. Um, cur means dog. She's calling him a fucking dog. Now, even during all this, while the mom is, sweating over her son, Bud is thinking, if I had a mom that fucking stupid, I would lie too. He walks away from the situation kind of in awe of Todd, kind of almost jealous of Todd and being like, "Well, you know what, Todd? Like, you're kind of a bitch, but I if my mom was that stupid, I think I would do what I fucking want to, Todd." So now you understand why I said she had a severe case of boy mom because her Toddy cannot do anything wrong. Toddy didn't do anything wrong to you. He was just helping you because I hate bedwetters. Like, girl, just fuck him. Just fuck him. So because of all this commotion, the father comes in, and this scene really rocked my fucking world. Not as a child, but as an adult, because I didn't remember this scene. And as a child, reading about the Amoses, I assumed they were white. Didn't you assume the Amoses were white? No. The dad comes in and is like, "This will be the reason that I don't help any more children because of you." Mind you, Bud did nothing. And he says, "I hate seeing my own people act so ungrateful." I read that and I was like, sorry, what? Now, this transitions into another scene that also had me thinking that these people were white. So, what this man does, because Black people are so ungrateful, is he's like, "Now you're gonna sleep in a shed. I'll show you to be ungrateful, you little." It just really it really gave racist vibes, and I just fully assume. I mean, maybe the mama is white and the kid is mixed. I heavily doubt that. Like, I feel like if that was the dynamic, it would have been addressed because it would be, sort of abnormal for the time to be in a mixed household. I mean, Bud at least would have said something. Um, so no, I just think they're all black, and I that shit blew my fucking mind. What are you talking about? Anyways, let me recenter myself. They force Bud to apologize for beating up Todd, and they take his suitcase as collateral before they lock him in the shed outside, so he doesn't run away. I'm like, You kinda locked him in. You kinda deadbolted a child into a shed, so I don't think you have to worry about the fucking suitcase, but I hate the Amoses, but don't worry, we're almost done. This next scene, you know how I said there were 2 memorable scenes? This next scene is the most memorable. I mean, obviously, because I remembered the scene before, finding out these people are fucking black, and the scene after, I'm like, obviously 2 memorable scenes. I forgot that this man is committing fucking black on black crime. Anyways, um Bud is in the shed. It's completely dark. Okay, because remember, they woke him up out of his sleep to do this. There are many things that are in this shed that, I didn't mention earlier, but Todd was teasing Buddy about, when he was hearing like, "Yo, they gonna put him in the shed," which I guess that just means they put children in the shed. They just put their foster children in the shed. Basically, he was egging Bud on while they were walking him out of the house, being like, "Yeah, there's vampire bats, there's hornets, and a kid died in there." And when Bud gets into the shed, well, there's a blood stain on the floor, there's a hornet's nest in the corner, and there's bats everywhere. So, maybe a kid did die in their shed. In any event, Bud decides, "Hey, I can't/won't sleep in here with those bats flying around." And so he hits what he thinks is a bat, and it ends up being the hornet's nest that he could not previously see in the corner, and out drops hundreds of hornets into this enclosed dead-bolted shed. And this is the scene that I have always remembered as a child because I've always grown up in places where hornets, wasps, and bees were always a huge and low-key scary problem. Like, have you ever lived in Oklahoma City? Have you seen those red hornets, bro? That shit is scary. So, this book has always scared me a little bit getting to this part because and he's 10, like, they can kill him. These hornets can kill him. Bud starts freaking out, and he's trying to get out. He's banging his shoulder against the door. He's a scrawny little thing. It doesn't do anything. The Amoses, mind you, are out in the house sleeping. They don't care. They can't hear anything. They've been through this before, right? He ends up being able to bust out the window. Obviously, he leaves a little bit bloody. He's got stings all over him, but he does get out of the shed. I know I mentioned earlier his rules and things. We have come across like a couple rules and things, but there's like a lot of them, and I feel like if I go through all them, it's just kind of not necessary. Like it's super cute if you read the book yourself, you can go through them, but going through everyone, I mean, there's at least two like per chapter. I'm not doing that, child. But this one I do want to read. It's Rules and Things number 328, and the full title of this little list he has actually is Rules and Things to make a better liar out of yourself. Um you might be like, "Well, doesn't that make him a bad person that he has so many rules to become a better liar?" But you have to remember he's a 10-year-old black man in Flint, Michigan with no parents. So, he might have to lie sometimes. Anyways, this is number 328. And I would also like to say before I read it, I know I'm like edging you, but these numbers are like out of nowhere. The last one before this one was number 118, and now we're on 328. This can be sad and funny. I don't know if Bud knows how to count. I don't know if he knows how to count. I don't He doesn't have 328 rules. But it could also be that he's just picking random numbers because again, Bud is smart, but at the same time you can be smart and not be taught basic things like math, unfortunately. I truly don't know if he's just picking numbers out of his ass because he wants to and he's a 10-year-old and has no rhyme or reason to be doing anything. That could very well be what it is. But he also might not know how to count. However, he does know how to read. So it's up to you what you want to believe. Anyways, number 328 is when you make up your mind to do something, hurry up and do it. If you wait, you might talk yourself out of what you wanted in the first place. So this is what he reminds himself of as he's like, okay, like I need to get out of here now. I'm not going to be a foster kid anymore. I'm going to go in there and get my suitcase. I know they have a gun. Let's go do it. As he's walking to the house, we get to look into his brain. I mean, obviously, this whole book is us looking into his brain because it's narrated by Bud. But he starts, saying to himself, like, how could you be so stupid to get yourself, locked in the shed? You should have seen that coming. Why would you hit the nest? And he just begins blaming himself. And that made me so sad But it's also so realistic, you know, when you don't have anyone to teach you anything, you assume the role of being the teacher, but you're also the student, so either way, if you do something wrong, like, it's your fault. Not really, but just remember, he's a 10-year-old kid, and he has no rationale, like, he literally cannot think rationally. I mean, girl, sometimes I don't think rationally, and I'm 23. Okay, so the fact that he's blaming himself, it's not rational. It does make me sad, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know if he can find it in himself to blame anyone else because he feels as though not he feels, like, okay, he is very, like, prepared for this life, not do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, he's prepared himself for this lifestyle, and thus far, he has protected himself, you know, as well as he can. So getting into this situation in his eyes, he got here because he had his guard down for, like, once in his life, he had his guard down, and now he's here, and it just makes me sad. I don't know. I'm just like, "Bud, it's not your fault, you're 10. You just got beat up." Bud is a young boy, obviously, and what young boys love to do is make each other pee in their sleep. So, he remembers, you know, the old trick, you put someone's hand in warm water while they're asleep and they pee themselves, but the reason why this is the perfect act of revenge is, remember, Todd's mom hates bedwetters. I'm like, "Bud, I love you right now." He makes sure to go grab the gun, not because he wants to use it, but so if he makes any noise or, like, he's getting revenge on Todd specifically. So if Todd starts, like, yelling or something, then they can't go grab the gun because he knows, unfortunately, he gonna get shot for real. So Bud gets some warm water, does his little thing. Todd wets the bed, but his bed, you know, since he's mommy's favorite little boy, doesn't actually have the plastic cover on it. So when he wets the bed, oh, he wets the bed, chow. And then he runs out of the house and hits the road and he is off. Where is he going? He doesn't know yet, but he's off. He realizes as the adrenaline wears off that he's actually in a lot of pain and his cuts and stings hurt like fuck. And he's also a black child in the middle of the street, in the middle of the night. And that's just really not the cutest thing to be doing. So he decides to go to one of the only places he really knows how to get to, which is up north to the library, which we find out he used to go there with his mom all the time and meet up with a nice lady named Mrs. Hill. Um, so he heads to the library. Unfortunately, the library, you get the sense that when he would do this before, you get the sense that he's done this before, run away to the library, right? And so his plan was to go in through the windows, and I'm guessing last time he went, the windows, you know, had free access, they were easy to get through. But when he comes this time, the windows are barred over on the outside, which is so annoying. Like, it's a public library, and like it's a public facility meant to help people. Why are you barring the windows? But again, Flint, Michigan, racism, Great Depression, you know, it's all coming into play here. So unfortunately, he has to sleep outside the library and he waits for this thing called what he calls a mission, but it's basically just a soup kitchen and it opens for breakfast and dinner. So he's like, yo, I'm asleep outside the library, wake up in time to go to the mission at 7 a.m. and get me some food because I'm hungry, child. Because you know they didn't feed him. Before he goes to sleep, though, he makes sure that everything is in his suitcase because he doesn't know if the Amoses are thieves. He opens up the suitcase and he says he does, you know, notice that they definitely went through his stuff because, as I said before, I could probably reconstruct his suitcase exactly how he puts everything in there just off of memory. He can tell everything is not put back in the same exact way. So they went through his suitcase. He's just making sure everything is there, which it is. And so he says, you know, you can call them liars, but you can't call them thieves. And that's why I like Bud. He is so like unbiased is not the right word because he very obviously does not like the Amoses. But he's very just like, you know, there's stuff that is and there's stuff that isn't. You know, they're liars and they're terrible people and they're awful, horrible human beings, but they're not thieves. They didn't steal my stuff. Get to see another one of the belongings in his suitcase, which is actually a picture of his mother, but unfortunately, it's when she was like a very young child, like younger than him. But you know, he still carries the picture because he wants to remember his mom. In the picture, she's actually very upset. She's on top of a pony. she's crying, and she's got this big old hat on, and Bud is just reminiscing about how his mom used to show him this picture and be like, "That hat was so dirty, that's why I was, upset wearing it. My dad forced me to wear the hat and take a picture, but, that man came around with that pony around, the neighborhood." I think she said, like, every Sunday or something, and he would never wash the hat, and the rim was black, and basically, this is Bud's version of, like, a story to go to sleep, right? He's looking at the picture of his mom, reminiscing, feeling warm, sleeping outside, just getting back into a headspace of, like, "Okay, I'm here, like, let's wind down." And it's just really interesting always to see what he brings in his suitcase, and I think it's really sweet that even though he doesn't have an updated picture of his mother, he still brings this photo and he knows exactly what it's about, almost like his mom is talking to him in a way. He's, further thinking about this picture, he does describe his mom in a way, and he says that she was very neat and she was very clean, but she was also chaotic, and she would, grab his face sometimes and just repeat the same sentences over and over and over because she really wanted to get them into his head. And so, what I'm thinking, I'm not going to armchair diagnose the girl, okay? But what popped into my head was some kind of OCD realness going on, and not just because she don't like dirty stuff, that's not why. Like, the repetition of the words and the kind of, like, franticness and the kind of, like, everything has to be exactly how it needs to be, and you need to know this, you need to know this, you need to know this, and everything else. And her obsession with the flyers and just kind of, like, fiddling with it, and we see later in the book that all of this stuff that he's kinda collected, she had in a specific drawer, like, she had specific drawer for specific things, but it wasn't even like, "Oh, these things go together." It was more so by, like, feeling, if that makes sense, because basically she had, like, a nostalgia drawer, and that's where most of the stuff in Bud's suitcase came from. So I just think, that's my thought process, even if it's not OCD. Reading this back as an adult, you can understand that his mom is mentally ill, whether it's depression, anxiety, whatever it is. You can understand through what he's saying that his mom is kind of severely mentally ill. He just sees that as his mom, though. You know what I mean? He doesn't see it as, "Oh, well, she was different from other people, something was wrong with her, that played into her death." No, he's just like, "Yeah, my mom's kinda, like, chaotic and weird, and then one day she died." But reading it back, I'm just like, "Oh." Even as a child reading it, I didn't realize that what they were trying to get at is that, the brain was not all there. Um, and I just think it's interesting and kind of sad. Well, actually very sad. As he's drifting off, he's remembering one of the speeches that his mom would repeat to him let me repeat to him a lot, which was, "Your name is Bud, not Buddy." And that's kind of how he's got this little drill, Bud, not Buddy, Bud, not Buddy, Bud, not Buddy. It's because his mom drilled it in him. And she says that this is why I told y'all to remember that Miss Amos called him a cur. She says, "If I wanted to name you Buddy, I would have added a DY. But Buddy is the name of a what? A dog. You're not a dog. You're a human. So your name is Bud, not Buddy." And notice that they kept calling him Buddy, and then, of course, she called him a dog. And I just think, that's really what triggered him to be like, "I'm not doing this foster home shit anymore." Because, I can deal with y'all getting my name wrong. That's one thing. But for you to do that shit and then call me a dog, like the exact thing my dead mother didn't want. Oh, baby, I'm gone. Oh, baby, I'm gone. Ooh, preach, Bud. Just, oof, when I read that, I was like, Bud's mom, she got some issues. Everyone knew it except Bud, and she knew it too. But mm, mm, that was such a great thing to drill into Bud's head is, "I'm not stupid. I know how to spell your name. And if I wanted to name you Buddy, I would have named you Buddy." Ooh, it just sends a chill up your spine. Anyways, so Bud falls asleep, but not really to anyone's surprise. He sleeps past the time he needed to be able to make it in time for breakfast at the mission. But he's like, it's only like 2 blocks away. Let me run. If there's still a line outside, at least I can get in line, even if I just have to get like some leftover crumbs, right? So he sees the line. He's like, hell yeah, slay. Let me get into the line. But there's like this line guard. I don't know what else to call him. And he's like, "Yo, the line is cut off. You can't get in line." And Bud's like, "Hey, look at me. I kind of need this food. Like, you guys don't serve anything else until dinner, which is like, I'm guessing 6, 7 p.m. that night." He's like, "I haven't eaten since yesterday." And then the guy stops him. He's like, "I don't want your little sob stories, all you little children." He's obviously like angry, and he's just kind of taking it out on Bud. But he's like, "All you little children, you never listen to me. You're always running around, cutting in the line, being uncivilized. Get the fuck out my line." Just like, why are you going off on this kid at 7 in the morning? But it's like, but like, please, sir, like, please, like, I'm so hungry. And so he actually goes to hit him with a baton. He starts motioning that he's gonna beat this child broad daylight over a line. I'm like, baby girl child, if they're out of food, they will just tell him no, and then like that's fine. Like you don't have to beat him, I don't think. But then this taller, obviously older black man comes and he's like, "Yo, like, what did they name him? Hold on. Charles." He named him Charles. He's like, "Yo, Charles, come here. Like, you gotta get back in line with your mama. Come back with me and your mama." And so Bud almost like blows it and goes like, "Who the fuck are you? My name's not Charles." Like, he gets it a little bit, and he walks with these people, and he gets in line, and then, the guard is still looking because 'cause I'm guessing people kinda do this stunt kind of a little bit, a lot, and so he's still looking to be like, "Is that really your kid?" And so the mom, kinda hits him on the back of the head. It's like, "Charles, you keep running away from me, Charles." And then he turns around. I'm like, this shit is so funny. Like, I don't know. I just want to point out, okay, again, we see the degree up here. I am like kind of a nerd. So I took actually lots of classes on sociology because I just hate the rhetoric around poor people. And the only way that you can bust untrue rhetoric is by going and learning facts and, researching that shit for yourself and writing the papers and reading the books, and I think it's something that we should all do. But there is this saying that we all have the same 24 hours in a day. Well, this is one of the many things that poor people have to do that makes it so that statement is truly just false. They don't have 24 hours because in your 24 hours, you wake up, you walk 20 feet to your kitchen, and you make breakfast in 20 minutes, and then you're out the door to work. Well, no, what they have to do is wake up at probably, you know, if the line is this long and it's just now 7 a.m. and that's when they serve breakfast, you probably gotta wake up at 4 a.m. and hope that you get there by like 5 or 5:30 to stand in line until 7 a.m. And that's just to get to the door. Then you gotta be served and then you gotta get back on the bus or walk to work or whatever it is. And that's already like what, 4 or 5 hours of your day already gone. So I'm just saying, I also love this book because it shows you the reality of what it is to be poor. I feel like a lot of media really gets it wrong on the reality of being impoverished, being poor. It's standing in line for hours to get one meal at a soup kitchen and knowing that that child is like an orphan or something and literally not going to be able to eat all day, so you take him in too. That's what being poor is. It's not like, let's just be so for real. It's not saying, "Oh, I can't pay rent, so I'm gonna stop getting Starbucks." Like, yeah, that does suck, babe, and you are poor in a way, but poverty, being impoverished, I feel like we have lost some of the meaning of what it is. You know what I mean? Child, I'm making some yams. I had to go check on that shit. I completely forgot they were in the slow cooker. Anyways, they're not done yet. But there are lots of little details in this book that really show you a true impoverished experience, like a true impoverished neighborhood. For example, once they get into the soup kitchen and they're sitting down to eat, there's a bunch of signs, kind of like about the rules of the soup kitchen and where to put your stuff, what to do, your etiquette, and things like that. But at the top of every sign, it says, "Please read to your children." And so Bud, he can read, so he's like, I don't know why you'd have to read that to your children, like, I'm not fucking stupid." But the thing is, he is an extreme outlier. Most children, if not all, in this little community that Bud is a part of, are illiterate. and most adults are probably functionally illiterate as well, and there's probably only really a few of them that can fully read, okay? And that's another reality of being poor and having poor education and poor resources. It's created that way. Like, let's not get it twisted because there's no, point on this earth that does not have enough resources for the people that live there. Okay. Not enough resources being allotted to your community. You have a lot of people that can't read. You have a lot of children that probably aren't going to school that day. They're going to work. Those children probably aren't going to school, they're going to work. And in fact, I went and did research on the schools in the Great Depression, and I was like, how does that work? Because nowhere in this book does anyone mention school. Like, not Bud, not the adults around him. Even at the end of the book, no one mentions enrolling this kid in school. And so I looked it up. Most of the schools at this point had closed. So if you're under the age of like 8, you probably didn't get a chance to be taught how to read, and you probably aren't ever going to get the chance to be taught how to read because by the time the Great Depression really is over, you're done with the thought of going to school. They would probably be, if not, preteens, probably mid to late teens, everyone in Bud's age group, and they're out dealing with work. They're not gonna go back to high school to learn how to read at the age of 14, once the Great Depression is over, you know what I mean? Those people are out in the world now, they're out working. So I really just think we should think about that because yes, this is a fictional book, but that stuff actually happened. The schools actually closed. The schools were closed. And so I feel like we have a good portion of like, what is that, 2 generations ago that like just can't read. And I think we should address that more. Anyways, Bud goes to the library after breakfast and he's looking for a librarian that he used to, talk to when he would go with his mom named Miss Hill. But she isn't there. And so Miss Hill, I don't did I introduce her in the characters? Because I low-key feel like I have not said her name. Sorry, I'm scrolling through my thing. Did I mention Miss Hill? Did I say that she was kind of like the only mother that Bud really has? Okay, well, if I did mention her before, so sorry. Y'all already know I'm smoking. But if I didn't mention her, Miss Hill is basically, like I said, the closest thing that Bud has to a mom after his mom dies, and you get the sense that when times get tough, he goes to the library and he talks to Miss Hill. But unfortunately, she's not there. There's another librarian there, which he does make sure to point out that she's a white lady, which is why I said before that if the Amoses were a mixed family, Bud would have said that the mama was white. Even though the lady is white, and you get the sense that, that means there's less trust going on, obviously. One, because it's not Miss Hill and he just doesn't know her, but two, because she's white. Even though she's white, he is still able to, have enough trust in the library itself to leave his suitcase up at the front desk while he goes to do his thing. And I just do want to point out that again, libraries are public, safe spaces, just like parks, just like I'm blanking, but these are public spaces that need to be protected because the most vulnerable people can use them as shelter or a place with AC for the day. And I mean, it's a library. You can only do good things at a library. Okay. I know you can be like, but what if I bring a guy? Oh, okay. You can always do that too. But for the most part, if you're gonna stay anywhere to hang out because you have no place to go, like I would want you to go to the public library, like read a fucking book or some shit. And I just think with the way our country is going in such a conservative, like it's getting so conservative, it's getting so individualistic, like to a detriment. Like the US has always been individualistic, but what do you mean you defunded the public libraries? What are you talking about? But is kind of milling around, looking at books. What I think is interesting is that he picks up a book about World War II, which I was actually quite impressed with while I was reading. I was like, oh, okay, Bud Slay. And then the very next sentence was that he just wanted to look at the gore. And I was just like, oh, okay. But at the same time, you have to realize that children in these poor, underserved communities, okay, they probably have seen some shit, unfortunately. I mean, how do you think Bud knew that at the first chance the Amoses got, they would shoot him? He's probably seen it before, okay? He's probably been exposed to it before. So am I saying, like, that's a good reason to consume gore? No, but at the same time, you have to realize this is a child with absolutely no one pointing him in the right direction, and he has, like, no outlet. The internet doesn't exist. He has no outlet to kind of cope with the images in his head and the feelings that he's going through. So if one of the ways he can cope is by looking at old gore from World War II, well, I hope that you can get out of that mindset soon, sir, but at least it's not the worst coping mechanism because he could just be out shooting. He could just be out strapping. Eventually, though, he does get bored of, looking at dead people, and he cuts to the chase and he goes back up to the desk and he asks Miss Girl, he's like, okay, like, where's Miss Hill? When is she coming back? To which the librarian replies, haven't you heard? And this is where we get Bud's Rules and Things number 16. So, like I said, we went from 328 to 16. So, this is in no particular order. I think he's just picking numbers. And it says, if a grown up ever starts a sentence by saying, haven't you heard? Get ready because what's about to come out of their mouth is going to drop you headfirst into a boiling tragedy. And again, this is why I love Bud because just some of the ways he describes things, it's very obvious you're smart, but also like, what the fuck are you saying? A boiling tragedy. I mean, maybe that was like, maybe that was a saying for the time. What do I know? But I just think he's just a funny little dude. And so he starts to grimace. He's like, "Oh, no, I haven't heard the news." And she's like, "Girl, chill out. She just got married. She got married, baby. She's not here." Bud obviously asks, "Well, where did she go to get married?" And she says she went to Chicago, but she's probably not coming back, girl, which means, the dude she probably met was probably in Chicago, or she just wanted to get out of Flint, Michigan. Like, I cannot blame the girl. So what Bud then asks is, "Well, how long would it take me to walk there?" And if I was a librarian, okay, this kid, obviously like borderline emaciated, comes into the library, no parental supervision, holding everything he owns in a suitcase, and he's asking you, how long will it take to get from Flint to Chicago on foot? He's probably not asking you a hypothetical question, girl. It's probably not a hypothetical question, girl, but she's just like, "Oh my gosh, let's see." And let me take you back. Let me take you back, child. So she pulls out one of these books, which me personally, I have only seen once in my life, so you don't get to call me old. But, they were these conversion books, and basically, you would have a map. It could even be, a map of the world, but usually it would be, like, one state or one area, and it would have, like, 1.5 inches is this many miles, and then you would have to draw a line from point A to point B, measure it out, and then convert it, right? So she pulls out that big book, and she's like, "Well, let's figure it out together." I'm like, "Girl, get in the right headspace. This child needs help." After she does all of her conversion bullshit, they come to the realization that it would take Bud 54 hours to walk from Flint to Chicago on foot, to which Bud says, "Thank you for the bad news, ma'am." And he's just like, he's so sweet, but so sarcastic. Like, if I had a little kid, like, oh my gosh, like, I want to pop you in the mouth, but like, who can I really blame but myself? Like, he's so silly, and I wish he had a mom. So Bud walks away and he has to start brainstorming on what he's going to do. He tells himself, I'm too old to go back to the home. He realizes, I don't think he realizes that he's in the Great Depression, but he does realize that more and more babies, younger and younger, have been coming into the home and they're going to need most of their attention. And the older children kind of get neglected and forgotten in a way and left to their own devices. So he's like, I'm not going back to the home because it's either, that mess of bullshit or they just put me in some random foster family that just wants to abuse me, so I'm not going back there. I can't get to Miss Hill, so what am I gonna do? He decides, I'm super tired, and he remembers what his mother would always tell him is that when one door closes, another door opens, and he says, "You know what? I'm pretty sure me getting out of the Amos's house was opening some kind of door, and it's not gonna close until I go through it. So let me go take another nap outside under the trees in front of the library, and I will figure out what to do tonight." because he needs to go get dinner anyway, so it's not like he can leave today anyway, so we might as well take a nap. As he's sleeping, we can see that Bud is in a constant state of fight or flight because, as he describes it, a twig snaps near him somewhere. And think about how light the sound of a twig snapping is. It's like, but that jolts him awake. He's like, and he immediately grabs his knife. He has a knife on him, and he's just kind of sitting there. And he's like, if anyone wants to approach me, I have a knife. Someone does approach him, and he's, like, under his covers. He has a blanket in his suitcase, so he's under his blanket just waiting to see if he needs to, ambush this dude, and he can tell that someone is standing over him while he's under the blanket. Now think about, everything that could be going through his mind right now. It could be the police. It could be some random crackhead. It could be a racist person. It could be someone trying to take him back to the home. All of these options are options that he's, not really too fond of. So he's just sitting there hoping that the person gets the vibe that he doesn't want to be bothered and he won't have to stab someone in front of the library today. That person doesn't get the vibe and, takes the blanket off of him and he goes to start swinging, but he sees it's Bugs. Bugs is super happy to see Bud. Bud is super happy to see Bugs. They start catching up. Bugs says, yo, back at the home, you're like a legend. Everyone is saying that you beat up an older boy. Now, is this really what happened? No, he slapped him across the face and then he got pretty good. But obviously Bud goes along with it. He's like, yeah, yeah, I beat that cat up. What? Lex is overly concerned with asking Bud about the fight. Bud is like, yo, Bugs, what are you doing outside? Why are you here? To which Bugs says, oh, I'm a train hopper. I be on them trains. They take me over, to places where I can get work and I just skate by. I'm a train hopper. I'm on the lam just like you are. You should come with me. There's going to be a train leaving out of Flint tonight. And so but decides, yeah, I'm gonna go with you. I mean, you've survived this long and somehow you found me at the library and you seem a little tubby, you seem a little good. Let me go on the trains with you. And so they have to get directions to the next train because Flint, Michigan, there's a lot of railroads. There's a lot of railroads up there. So trains can kind of appear anywhere. And so they have to get directions from everyone, when is the next train dropping and where. And so they hear it wrong, but they get the direction to go to Hooperville, which is not a real place. And so they start trying to go to Hooperville and they keep, having to turn around, getting lost. Everyone's telling them different directions on how to get to Hooperville. Well, it's because it's actually Hooverville, like President Hoover, and there's multiple across Flint because hold on. I had to take a little drink. My tongue was getting twisted saying Hooperville when I knew I needed to be saying Hooverville. It was like a disconnect in my brain and it felt like my tongue had tied itself in a knot. Anyways, the reason they were getting all these different instructions, like I said before, is because of the Hoovervilles that popped up because of the Great Depression under President Hoover. And so they were just these small nomadic communities that would try and help each other out. Are y'all on TikTok? I know y'all are on TikTok. Have you heard of Slab City? Go on TikTok right now and look up Slab City. It's like slab cities, but like multiple across everywhere. This wasn't only a Flint thing. It wasn't even only a Michigan thing. This was countrywide as a result of the Great Depression. So you can't just ask, yo, where is Hooverville? It's not its own place. They do eventually find the Hooverville that is going to be visited by a train. It's either like, late that night, early in the morning, in the wee hours. And they head there, and there's a big group of people. There's a fire. There are people eating. They smell some good food. And obviously, the adults come over to them and they're like, yo, what are y'all doing here? Boys go up and tell the adults, like, hey, we're out on the lam. We're looking for work. We're wondering if you guys can help us get on the train. Do you know where it is? Do you know when it's coming? There's this one dude, and I mean, every kind of anarchist society has this one dude. And he's like, yo, you guys are better off just staying here. The grass isn't greener over there. You don't need to go on the train. fuck the system, just stay here and be poor and grimy with all of us. And I'm not saying like you shouldn't make the best out of a situation, but these young boys are clearly telling you, hey, we try to get on the train to go work to try and make something of ourselves. We don't want to live in a tent. And he's just like, nah, just live in the tent, bro. It's all good. Just live in the like, no. But another adult tells them, yo, the next train will be here like 5 in the morning or something. Y'all can stay here for the night. Obviously, you can't work or like bring food or clothes or anything like that to contribute to the Hooverville because they're all kind of helping each other out. But they're like, if you want to eat, just do some dishes after. And they're like, hell yeah, we'll eat and do some dishes. So everyone's kind of adding their own little things to this sort of like gumbo pot, right? And they're eating, and they're even excited because both Bugs and Bud get seconds, which you have to assume that they like probably never get, like literally never get. As they're eating and, talking with the general, population, they notice that there is a couple and an obviously like dying baby, like cough, 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 nonstop 24/7 dying baby over on the outskirts. Hi, of the Hooverville. And Bud asks, they're talking to a little girl. Her name is, I don't know how to pronounce her name. Okay, it's Deza. I'm going to say Deza? Deza? I don't think it's Deza. I'm gonna say Deza. They're talking to Deza. They're all about the same age. They're like, yo, why aren't they getting food? Why are they off on the outskirts? Why is no one talking to them? Just keep in mind, they're white. And she says, yeah, they don't want handouts from black people. We tried to give them food, but they said we don't need handouts from Negroes. Is that why you're homeless with all of them? Anyway, sorry. This really shows how racists are stupid. And if that like angers you, get the fuck off my page. Um, you cannot be smart and be racist. And it's just the thing that, like, you think brown people are inherently under you no matter the situation simply because you are white. Because you are white, you think you're in a better position than the other homeless people literally right next to you just because you're not brown. Nigga, your baby is dying in your wife's arms. You cannot provide for your family. And you want to talk about, we don't take handouts from Negroes. Oh, then get the fuck off my land. Why are you even over here taking heat from the fire? Deza, Bugs, and Bud begin cleaning dishes, but Bugs is a little wingman, okay? And he senses that Deza thinks that Bud's a little bit cute, so he's like, yo, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go make sure the oven's not on fire. Let me just go check on that real quick. And he disappears, and it's just Bud and Deza. And he always, I think it's so cute. Bud always makes sure to mention that her dimple is cute. Deza Malone, and her cute dimple, okay? And I don't know what it is with black people and dimples. I feel like every black person has dimples. You can even see that he has dimples in the cover. Can you see it on his little cheek? He's got a little dimple. Um, I just think it's so cute. Daisy Malone and her dimple. They start talking to each other, asking why the other is there, and we get some backstory on Deza that, again, reading back as an adult, I'm just like, ugh, like you guys don't even realize the shit that you are in. So Deza is basically like, yeah, my mom and I are here and we're waiting on my dad. We've been waiting for him for 7 months because he's gonna come back with money. And we're just waiting in the Hooverville because my dad's gonna come back on one of those trains. And he's gonna bring us money and then we're gonna get food and everything's gonna be absolutely fine and there's nothing to worry about. And this is obviously the version of the story that her mom has told her. But just from reading the book, you really gotta read the book. I'm giving you a nice little summary with commentary, but there's a lot of tone that you're missing when just talking about a book, which is fine. There's lots of different ways to enjoy media, but if you read it, you get the tone. There's like cat hair on me, so she is shedding. Um, but he's not coming back. He didn't leave them to go find work. He just left them. Um, but Daisy still loves her daddy, so she believes he's coming back. But being kind of the cynical, jaded little child he is like, well, how do you know your daddy coming back? Girl. it's been almost a year. How do you know your dad's coming back?" And she was like, "Well, the power of love. Like, he's just not gonna leave my mom. They've been together for 7 years. And he's just not gonna leave her because he loves her. So he's coming back." And, they start all this love talk and romance, and they see the moon, and they end up sharing a little kiss. And, this could be seen as cute. When I was a kid, I definitely thought it was cute. I was like, "Oh, you have a crush on this little girl and her cute dimple, and you're doing dishes together, and you share a little peck under the moonlight." Okay, I'm not gonna say like, "Oh, I condone it." I don't want 10-year-olds kissing each other, but I think that's what they do, right? Do 10-year-olds kiss each other? I mean, when I was 10, our recess actually had to be separated by gender because they kept kissing each other. I was not a part of this, y'all. I was not a part of this. Um, but yeah, in Oklahoma, that was no, I wasn't even 10 yet. That was in 3rd grade. In 3rd grade, they told us, "Well, the boys and girls can't play together anymore because y'all keep kissing each other." And I was just looking around like, "So I've been swinging on the swings. What are you guys doing?" Anyways, rather than looking at this as something that is cute, what I immediately thought of is this young girl in a poor community who is homeless, probably around not great influences. Okay, I'm not saying all poor people are bad, but I'm saying, you know what I'm saying. The fact that you are so willing to kiss a little boy that you just met an hour ago is not cute. It's not cute. To me, it's a sign that maybe something is happening sexually that should not be happening to this little girl. Um, in the Black community, we'll call her fast. I'm gonna call her traumatized, okay? There's just really no reason, I don't think, at least in my personal experience, that she should be so comfortable to be kissing this boy like an hour and a half after they met. I'm not shitting on the girl. And more so I'm shitting on her mom and who her mom is letting this girl be around. Um, but what is framed as a cute moment in a kid's book, I also think reading it back as an adult, you can kind of see that there's a different side to it. That it's kind of like, well, let's keep in mind that maybe that's not really so normal, but I'm glad they had a fun time. They end up separating because she goes over to, sleep with her mom, obviously, and then Bud goes over to sleep with Bugs, and obviously Bugs is like, "Hey, what happened?" And Bud's like, "Bro, like, shut the fuck up." And I just think, like, again, like, do I think there's something not cute going on? Sure. But also, I think it's just nice to see that Bud still has those quintessential, like, childhood moments of your best friend teasing you right after you had a conversation with your crush. You know what I mean? It's like, he's still a kid and he still gets to experience that kind of childlike embarrassment. And that part was cute. And I love Bugs. Before Bud goes to sleep, he does what he always does before he goes to sleep, which is going through his suitcase. So now we get to unlock a couple more trinkets. So the trinket that we get into this time is it's they call it a tobacco bag. I don't know what a tobacco bag is. Um, I'm guessing it's a bag that holds cigars. I can't imagine you would just want to hold loose tobacco in a bag. That sounds kind of awful. So I'm guessing it's maybe like some kind of leathery-ish bag to hold cigars, but I'm also just talking out my ass. So he says that in this tobacco bag, he has 5 stones, okay? And each of these stones have writings with dates and locations on them, cities on them. And he says, he doesn't know why his mom kept these, but she kept them in a drawer, and so he took them. And that is what we uncover this time that he goes over his suitcase. He dozes off, but he doesn't get to, stay asleep for long because people are yelling that there's a train coming and they had the train come earlier than normal so that less people would be able to get on. And you have to realize that the government is corrupt. The government has always been corrupt. And I'm sure they were purposefully trying to not allow people to board those trains or, have the trains pass by in a way that people would not be able to get on them, rendering them to still be poor. And I'm sure it's not a coincidence that they did this specifically on the stop to Flint, Michigan, that has a lot of Black people. Bugs ends up being able to get into the car as I think he woke up a little bit before Bud, or he was running faster or something like that. Bud is running, running, running. You can only assume that his fat ass suitcase is weighing him down, and he actually falls. And he could get trampled at this point because there's a large group of people trying to run up to these trains. He could get trampled, but some random stranger pops him up, picks him up, puts him back on his feet, and he starts running. But unfortunately, his flyer slips out of his suitcase, and he's like, I'm not going anywhere without that blue flyer. Of course, it's the blue one. I'm like, I had anxiety reading this. Of course, it's the blue one. He ends up throwing his suitcase to Bugs on the train, and he's like, I need to go get my flyer. He goes to get the flyer. He starts running up with the train. I'm thinking he's gonna make it, bro. I'm thinking he's gonna make it. He doesn't make it. He doesn't make it. In fact, there are even police up at the train tracks actively trying to stop people from getting on the tracks. Like, it's their job to stop people from getting onto this train so that they can have a better life. But here's the thing, just like in Desperate, okay, child? Oh, it's just my job. I'm just following orders. Why? You're stopping poor people on the brink of death from being able to better their lives. Why do you feel as though you have to do that job? There has never been a job I felt like I couldn't quit. Duh. So unfortunately, Bud does not make it onto the train, but Bugs at least has the wherewithal to throw his suitcase back out because he knows that Bud's entire life is in that suitcase, so at least he can have that suitcase. And I think that was actually very nice of Bugs to do. Do I wish he would have hopped off the train and saw it out with his brother? I wish, but I also do understand that Bug's been riding these trains. Okay, Bug's been riding these trains, and he can't jeopardize going out to get work and get some money and get food just because Bud is scrawny and couldn't make it to the train, and that sucks. Like, that sucks that you have to think about that. But imagine his head, okay? And this is why a lot of children that grow up like this end up being so tortured because you have to make little decisions like that of like, I have to leave behind my best friend and the closest thing I've had to a brother because I just have no other choice. If I stay here, I'm going to starve and die. So I have to leave Bud behind and hope that he can figure it out. So after, the train is leaving, the police, being the insufferable people that they are, start clearing out the Hooverville. You know how they do like sweeps on homeless people? It's basically like that. They're clearing out their camp and they have guns, right? And so everyone's kind of like hiding from them, hiding in the bushes. One person yells out, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, this is where people live. And then one of the police officers calls him a communist. A communist. I'm like, so can you please give me the definition of communism? How does that how does that apply to someone telling you, "Hey, stop destroying our stuff?" Like, if anything, that's like, because if anything, that's just not communism because he's acknowledging that it's his personal property. I just The police officer calls him a communist. Start shooting, which, clears out most people, but Bud still stays there. He's an adventurous little dude. But he stays there and he sees that they're not shooting at people. In fact, they are shooting holes into the bottom of the pots and pans that were in the Hooverville so that they are not able to be reused. So literally they are making these poor people who have nothing poorer and, taking away their stuff. And I just think, ooh, does that infuriate me? Yes, but it is such an amazing detail to put in this book because it shows how police and law enforcement have always been the op, but furthermore, they are willing to put you in a worse position. Not willing. It is their job to put you in a worse position than you were before. There is no need. First of all, there's just no need to sweep the Hooverville, but more than that, there's no need to render some of the only possessions they have as useless. They can't eat now unless it's fresh food, which you know damn well they don't have. You see what I mean? And it's like, this is stuff that has actually happened, okay? I know this is not historical fiction. I know y'all saw, okay, in one of my it was like the first video or the second video that I absolutely despise historical fiction. This is the closest we'll ever get to historical fiction. Um, so are these like real events like inspired by real like no, but, like, yes, like, these are experiences that people have, and the police I mean, you can even see it now with Job Corps and how the police have been treating homeless people and how homelessness is basically not basically, homelessness is illegal, and you can see that instead of just trying to redirect these people to somewhere else or to actually help them, what we're gonna do instead is destroy their housing, destroy their stuff, and destroy them as people and leave them for dead. Your bud sees this, he's like, "Well, damn." There goes my food. So he decides that he's going to go back to the library, do his little routine, sleep outside the building, and then go back to the mission for breakfast and hopefully spend the next day brainstorming on what he can do from there. Y'all, that is where I'm gonna leave you on a cliffhanger. What is Bud gonna do next? I don't know. You will have to join me in 2 weeks, and yes, I will be here in 2 weeks, I promise. I promise, like, literally, as soon as I cut the cameras for this video, I'm going to dress up and film my well, with the rain child, that might be a lie, but I promise I will be here in 2 weeks, okay? I'm in a better headspace, I'm not having a breakdown, even if I do have a breakdown, I will be able to structure my videos around it better, okay? Everything is a learning process. But yes, basically, this is gonna be broken up into 3 little chunks since we don't have, cute little book sections like in The Tale of Despero, so there's gonna be 2 more videos. Join me again in 2 weeks. Thank you for joining me, y'all. Stay literate.